all this amazing work. We see schools, we see homes, we see a gym, all these different things. And this man, said, well, why don't you come with me? I'll give you a tour. And so, this is my home, this is my beach house, this is my school, this is my repair shop, and this is right here is my church, and over here is the church I used to go to. So the lesson here is the gentleman, even though he lived by himself, he had conflict with the church that he used to go to. Everywhere he went, conflict surrounded him. Sadly, conflicts can lead to many disastrous results, but if handled properly, he can also lead to relationships being restored. James 1:19 tells us, let's see if this is going to work. Know this, my beloved brethren, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. Naturally, we are slow to hear, quick to speak, and quick to anger. Anyone else? No? Just me? Okay. Amen. Conflict often happens when we do those things in reverse. Conflict is often the result of an unmet, let's go to the next slide. People have different kinds of concerns. I know that there are other things that may cause a conflict in someone's life, but oftentimes I had taken a listening course on conflict resolution about 5 years ago, and they said basically, if you're having a conflict, if you write down this acronym, it's probably one of these things. Now, we're told by certain counselors that listening, there's level 1 listening. This is someone who's going to ask non-relevant questions or ask a non-relevant detail. They'll think of how they may one-up the person's story. They minimize the other person's story. They change the subject in the middle of what someone is sharing. They make the topic about themselves, or they often interrupt. I don't know if that's ever you, but someone's opening their heart about something that means a lot to them, and sadly, you start telling them about your dog or something about your vehicle when they're opening their heart up. You would be maybe a level 1 listener. Not so great. People might not want to confide too much in someone who's a level 1 listener. But we're told, level 2 listeners, they will attempt to understand the message of the story and what is important to the person. They will look for the meaning behind the words. They will look for why the story or topic is important to the person. They'll make it all about the other person and what they're dealing with. And imagine what it's like, or say more about that as they're following up with them. What have you learned from said experience? And they'll read their body language and ask maybe what is going on with why your arms crossed, why are you rolling your eyes, what are these different things going on? And so listening to hear, not just listening to respond. Someone like Jesus, when he would, even at the well, he would break down social norms and barriers. He'd be willing to talk to people and get to the root of the issue. I don't know about you, but after a small conversation at a well, I don't know if I'd be going into someone's personal experiences, but Jesus was led by the Spirit to do it at that time, and he was led, and he was able to, as we know, many people came to hear what he had to say. In conflict, many people say things they don't mean, and people mean things they don't say. Conflict is often a result of a lack of good communication. Psychologists say that conflict can often arise before words are ever spoken. They say 55% of the time it could just be your body language. 38% of the time it's your tone of voice, and 7% of the time it's just simply words. I think when you're trying to tell someone something, your arms are crossed, they're rolling their eyes, the doors are closed to the ears. They do not want to hear what you have to say. To easily take offense and resist forgiveness is a misguided way of protecting ourselves rather than allowing God to be our protector. Sometimes not reacting, doing nothing is the best response to someone's maybe a verbal attack. Dr. Lynn Buzzard, she gives us advice on how to turn a disagreement into a feud. Turn a disagreement into the feud. I'm kind of throwing this upside down here, but I thought this was interesting. She says, be sure to develop and maintain a healthy fear of conflict, letting your own feelings build up so you're in an explosive frame of mind. Number 2, if you must state your concerns, be as vague and general as possible. Then the other person cannot do anything practical to change the situation. Number 3, assume you know all the facts and you are totally right. Speak prophetically for truth and justice. Do most of the talking. Of course, you know she's being a bit facetious here. Number 4, with a touch of defiance, announce your willingness to talk with anyone who wishes to discuss the problem with you, but do not take steps to initiate such conversation. Number 5, latch tenaciously onto whatever evidence you can find that shows the other person is merely jealous of you. Number 6, judge the motivation of the other party on previous experiences that showed failure or unkindness. Keep track of any angry words. Number 7, if the discussion should, alas, become serious, view the issue as a win-lose struggle. Avoid possible solutions and go for total victory and unconditional surrender. Don't get too many options on the table. Now, friends, you want to do probably the opposite of what she says on this list, but oftentimes just our natural inclination is to win rather than possibly compromise. And I know as Christians we don't want to compromise our faith, but there are times in relationships where, you know, maybe you're going to be doing something a little bit differently that isn't a sin that may bring a little peace to the home. We can ask ourselves, do I fall into any number of these 7 examples? Do I tend to do any of these things? Proverbs 15:18 tells us a hot-tempered person stirs up conflict, but the one who is patient calms a quarrel. It's important for us to not be hot-tempered, and when things go the way we didn't want them to, that we can actually be a calm person. I know that an example that was given me that I really love to use is that sometimes we are like a glass of water that's filled to the brim, and any little issue, any little conflict that arises, it gets bumped and water spills over top. And we're just walking around like a full glass of water. Anything that gets in our way, we overflow, and we're not so nice to those around us. Here, Dr. Gottman tells us there are 4 horsemen of the relationship apocalypse. If these come parading across your relationship, you could be in deep trouble. There's criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. So an example of criticism would be attacks the character of the recipient instead of focusing on a specific behavior. The antidote to criticism is to talk about your feelings using I statements and express a positive need. So if you're having an issue with somebody, you know, saying, hey, this is what makes me feel, and using a lot of I statements will help them listen to what you're having to say and maybe where you're coming from. Contempt, an expression of superiority that comes out of sarcasm, cynicism, name-calling, eye-rolling, sneering, mockery, hostile humor. Contempt is the greatest predictor of a relationship failure and needs to be eliminated. The antidote to contempt is to treat one another with respect and to build a culture of appreciation in the relationship. And then there's defensiveness. It's a self-protection through righteous indignation or playing the victim. Defensiveness never solves the problem and is really an underhanded way of blaming your partner. The antidote is to accept responsibility for your part of the conflict. And then there's stonewalling. It occurs when the listener withdraws from the conversation without resolving anything. It takes time for the negativity to be created, for the first 3 horsemen to result in stonewalling. It can easily become a habit. The antidote to stonewalling is to break for at least 20 minutes, calm down, and return to the conversation. There is a difference between anger and aggressiveness. You see, I had an experience where I was living with a buddy. We bought a house as an investment because we seen the market was going up in Saskatchewan many years ago. And I had this dog, and this dog was not a very well-behaved dog. We worked with him a lot. And what happened was my friend Nathan, he had the downstairs and I had the upstairs. He ordered a pizza. The pizza was on the counter. My dog was hungry and ate his pizza. Pizzas aren't cheap. So, as you know, this became a conflict. And sadly, a bunch of friends were over at another time where I think, you know, you had a pot of like pierogies or something at the back of this back burner of the stove, jumps up, pulls it down, eats it. It's like strike two, strike three. I didn't want to know what happened. This friend's a military guy, so I don't know what he was going to do. So in front of all our friends, my friend, he just, he kind of lost it on me. And he's like, your dog, and he said all these bad things, and I was like, oh man, you could just hear a pin drop. And everyone there was like, I think it's time to go. And so my friend went downstairs, and he did something that was really mature and amazing that I didn't expect. He came upstairs with a list, and he's like, Adam, I don't appreciate your dog, but these are like 10 things I appreciate about you. And he said that after chewing me out in front of all my friends. And I thought, wow, what a grown-up guy. You know, I probably deserved that, but yet he decided, you know what, I'm gonna take some time, I'm gonna breathe, I'm gonna apologize for what I said, because there's a lot of things that, you know, he could have complained about. I'm not the easiest person to live with. But, so anyway, I thought, what a great example when you can have this opportunity to maybe just lose it. Sometimes we can say something in 5 minutes, and it's gonna take 5 months to repair those words. You see, in life, and most of the time in conflict, there's this diagram by Pastor Ken Sande, and it's from his book, The Peacemaker book. And I thought it was kind of neat. You start on one side where there's escape responses, peacemaking responses, and then attack responses. You've got everything from suicide, flight, denial, and in the middle, like they call it like the sweet spot, overlook, reconciliation, negotiation, mediation, arbitration, accountability, assault, litigation, and murder. Hopefully we never get to the last one there. Ideally, we want to stay in the middle, overlooking the small things that are menial or insignificant are, at times, the right thing to do. Proverbs 19:11 tells us, sometimes it's good to overlook our small things. Too serious to overlook, of course, if someone's being abused or there's a situation where the cops need to be called, you know, you don't want to overlook something like that. Negotiation is really, hopefully, you have two people that can bargain and have a cooperative process of coming to an agreement. Mediation, there's a third party that's kind of almost like a referee. Both parties are responsible in making the final decisions. Arbitration, you ask someone to just make that binding decision. Accountability, a wanderer who needs some support in staying faithful. That's why I think God designed that people go out 2 by 2 when they were sharing the gospel. And we also want to stay away from fleeing, but not always. If we look at the life of David, David had every reason to flee in his relationship with Saul. Saul took 3,000 chosen men from all Israel and went to seek David. And this was not for a Bible study, obviously, and his men on the rocks of the wild goats. Saul went in to attend to his needs, use the washroom. David and his men were staying in the recesses of the cave. Then the men of David said to him, this is the day in which the Lord said to you, behold, I will deliver your enemy into your hand, and you may do to him as it seems good to you. And David arose and secretly cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Can you imagine someone trying to literally kill you? You have him, there he is, caught literally with his pants down, and you can end his life, and he chooses to just cut off a piece of his robe. As we know, he lets Saul know, look, this is what I could have done to you. And Saul does this flip-flopping of, I'm sorry, to I want to kill him, I'm sorry, I want to kill him. Obviously, Saul needed some serious mental help. We can't blame David for using this escape method. His life was on the line. But the problem with David in this situation, he handled it well. But he had a son named Absalom. I don't know if you remember Absalom, but David was used to escaping and avoiding situations that it caught up with him. Our human nature often wants to avoid difficult situations. There are rare times to flee from conflict, but God often wants us to plant so that we can grow. A plant doesn't thrive if it constantly gets uprooted and replanted. Roots don't have a chance to really deepen, and growth is stunted. When storms and droughts come, the roots are shallow and weak. If a deeply rooted plant is in the ground, it can withstand more heavy rains and droughts. A smart gardener won't keep moving a tree just because the conditions are not great for a while. He allows the tree to adapt and strengthen itself. Most people usually deal with conflict in one of two ways. They withdraw or they get angry. And so, knowing your situation, there are times to withdraw, and there are times to be angry. You know, we look at Jesus, there was times where he was righteously angry, and for every reason, whether it's, you know, they were defying the temple, or, you know, the Pharisees were doing things they knew they shouldn't be doing, and he was calling them out. Fight or flight, aggression or avoidance. Neither of these strategies provides an effective long-term technique for managing conflict because we have different temperaments. Some of us are less confrontational than others. So, as you know, with Absalom, he had heard that his half-brother Amnon had done unspeakable things to his sister, and he had yet to, and David had failed to confront Amnon. Instead of deceitfully, he arranged for Amnon's murder, Absalom, 2 years later, and fled after the deed had been done. King David had failed to discipline Amnon and now was shirking his responsibility to settle this conflict with Absalom, even though his son longed to see him. David relented only after Joab finally said, hey, come on, you got to see him. And so here's the thing, friends. David refused to see Absalom for another 2 years until Absalom forced the issue and the meeting did take place. But it was too late. Absalom had become embittered and angry, and he wanted to take over his father's kingdom. Friends, it's been said the opposite of love is hate. But I've heard this definition of hate. The opposite of love is not hatred, it's indifference. It's, I don't care, your time isn't worth it, you're not worth investing in. Whether he meant to or not, David was communicating the opposite of love to Absalom. David's conflict of avoidance strategy not only failed to work, but eventually caused the conflict to escalate. Had he dealt promptly with the issues at hand, surrounding Amnon and Absalom, Amnon's murder and Absalom's conspiracy might have been averted. The key to conflict management is a prompt reconciliation. We are reminded to not let the sun go down on your anger, and we're told that it's actually Ephesians 4:26, not Ecclesiastes 4:26, because there is no Ecclesiastes 4:26. Effective conflict managers know how to balance truth, confrontation, and love through reconciliation. David shows that putting off confrontation only strains relations and inevitably compounds the problem. Avoidance allows bitterness and to simmer and alienation to solidify. Like David, it's easy for us to desire to flee from whatever the problem arises. Now, if you're in a ship in the middle of the sea, I guess Jessica Lake probably doesn't get too many storms too bad, but if you're in an actual sea, if there's a storm arising, is the best way to deal with it to turn sideways and try to get away, or is it to face it head on? Yeah, you see, like, you can go online and you can see ships, there's huge waves coming. They don't turn or try to turn around, they hit it straight on. And a lot of times with our conflicts, using God's wisdom, we have to be able to deal with them rather than let them fester, and things will get worse. As you know, for many weeks we've been going through the book of Daniel. We've been talking about last day events and how things that are happening in the world are affecting everything that was talked about in the book of Daniel is a picture and a type of what we will be experiencing as Christians. Now, if we go to the book of Daniel, we see that a few Hebrew boys who leaned on the Bible in their greatest conflict were able to do so head on. These boys had been known to deal with conflict where they, with Daniel, let's see, what did Daniel do when he was in his greatest, when they came to kill him, what did he do? Did he flee? He didn't try to assault or litigate. What did he do? He essentially tried to negotiate. He's like, hey, do you think you can give me some more time? Is there a way that maybe God will give you some time, I can hear and understand this dream? I think it's important for us that when we get into situations where it seems like there is no way out, it's okay to ask a question, to ask for another opportunity. Daniel, a great negotiator, purposed in his heart to eat a certain way, and as a result of that, God was able to give him wisdom, skill, knowledge, and ability. He negotiates more in Daniel chapter 2 for more time to ask to understand this dream. He stays calm and doesn't get angry. I probably would have taken the first camel out of town, but Daniel there is strong and understands, look, God has got a better plan here. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego go as far as they can without, they try to follow the dictates of Babylon as far as they can, but when it comes to their food and to worship, they're saying, look, we can go no further than what you want us to do. They faced their conflicts head on, and as a result, they were blessed, and other people came into the knowledge of the truth. Now, my question for you today is this. We talk about conflicts against one another, and thankfully I don't think there's any conflicts that I have got to resolve here. I know oftentimes when we do foot washing and we do communion, that's a time where you can come together, and maybe you have an issue with a brother or a sister, and you can say, hey, let's try to figure this out together. But we're planning for that later, hopefully in the month. But my question today is, what is conflicting you with your time with Jesus, especially now? I don't know if there's anything else that God can really do to wake us up out of our spiritual stupor. So many things going on in the world, in our community, where God is trying to get our attention. You know, Ephesians 6 tells us, finally be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the full armor of God that you may take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against authorities, against the powers of darkness of this dark world, and against spiritual forces of evil in heavenly realms. The chronically offended people are like Cain. They believe everyone is out to get them. They have difficulty seeing things they need to change because they are so vigilant outside of themselves, looking for the next person who's going to treat them poorly. We do not have to quarrel amongst ourselves. So, moving on, I wanted to say this. Ellen White has a great quote here in Testimonies 9, page 11. She says, the agencies of evil are combining their forces and are consolidating. They're strengthening for the great last crisis. Great changes are soon to take place in our world, and the final movements will be rapid ones. The things that are happening in this world, we're going to have conflicts with buying and selling one day soon. We're going to have conflicts with people from other churches. We're going to have maybe even conflicts amongst ourselves. I don't know one new church building that has been bought, one person might not have a disagreement about maybe something that's going to be built or added on. We're going to really have to learn how to deal with situations that we're going to be dealing with in the future. But I wanted to show this video, but I'm not going to, because there's kids here, and it's in nature, but I got a kind of almost a screenshot. It's kind of based on 1 Peter 5:8 when I seen the video. It says, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. In this video there are two, I guess, so those antelopes, I guess. They're fighting, their horns are locked, and in the back you see a lion running full speed. And these antelopes are they're just fighting, they're fighting, and all the other animals around there are just fleeing. And they're like, and it's so sad because these two antelopes cannot stop fighting with each other until, sadly, one of the lions devours one of the antelopes. And it's so sad because oftentimes in the church, we can look at each other, we can fight about things, and we're like, look, this battle is a spiritual one. We're not supposed to be battling amongst each other. There's a roaring lion seeking to devour us. And when we can take our eyes off of the things that we may have conflict with amongst ourselves and see that there's a lion that is really trying to mess us up and get us into a bad spiritual state, that, you know, the closer we spend and more time we spend with Jesus through all these different conflicts, God will allow us to see things clearly and put aside the things that are so easily besetting us. So friends, today, I guess my question for you is, what's conflicting your time with Jesus? Is there any conflicts in your life, neighbors, friends, family, that you maybe need to call up? Maybe you need to say, hey, I forget what we fought about, but maybe we need to just put some water under the bridge. Friends, I know it's difficult. I know that when I became a Christian, it was a tough thing. I was like, God, I want to follow you. I want to do whatever you say. And then I remember, like, getting impressed with, hey, you need to make it right with that person. Like, but I don't want to talk to that person. That person's a bozo. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to talk with them. But you know what's funny is that as God convicted me to make things right with that person, a relationship that I thought was broken forever became strong. And the people that I thought, you know, I could never be friends with this person, became one of my best friends. So friends, that conviction that is being brought to you, I pray that you will listen to it, that you'll do something about it, because God will give you the wisdom to say what not to say, and oftentimes He'll allow time to heal the wounds that may have happened. And so friends, as we journey together to Zion, I pray that our eyes will be focused on Christ, the conflicts will be cast aside, but we can look to the book of Acts where we see that when the Holy Spirit was poured out, were all the people fighting and complaining, and was there strife amongst them? No, they were able to put things aside, and because of that, the Holy Spirit was able to be poured down in great measure. So, friends, I just pray that God would bless you exceedingly, abundantly, above all we can ask or think. Amen.